Hey everyone, welcome to the Sustain the Range podcast. I'm Lauren, your host, and this podcast is a personal exploration of my experiences in everything ranching. From beef operations to training horses to sustainable farming and regenerative practices, we'll cover it all. Each episode features enlightening conversations with guests who bring their unique perspectives and expertise. Whether they're seasoned ranchers or first-generation farmers, we all share a common bond and deep appreciation for the land and the livestock we raise. Tune in each week for engaging discussions, inspiring stories, and practical insights from the ranching community, and let's embark on this incredible journey together. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sustain the Range podcast. This week I am coming to you from my car, so I do apologize. The background noise is a little much. I will do my best to edit it. It is pretty windy where I'm at, so yes, bear with me this week. But I figured I would just jump on my 13-hour drive and record this episode that I've been wanting to record for a few months now, for you guys to just get to know me a little bit better and my health journey, because I know that I have spoken to a lot of people, women specifically, who have kind of been on the same similar path to me. But anyway, we'll get into it in terms of when I decided to try vegan for a little bit and my journey into kind of developing some hormonal and some digestive and health issues because of that, and then my journey back into eating meat again and how that has really helped me solve my health problems and kind of the reasons behind why I did try veganism and all that stuff. So but anyway, so again, I do apologize if the background noise is a little much. Me and the two dogs are packed into the cab here because on my drive through Wyoming during a snow and windstorm, my bedroll on the back of my truck the bed cover decided to snap off. So it started flying around everywhere in the middle of Wyoming, 55 mile per hour winds. So that was really fun. I had to pull over and try to figure that out, and I ended up just rolling the bed cover up and then packing as much of my stuff into the cab of the truck as possible. So it looks like I'm living out of my cab of the truck with the two dogs at the moment. But so that was fun. But thankfully, other than that, the drive has been going pretty well, and I'm not too far from where I'm going in Montana. I am just headed to Montana for a few days to see some friends, do a branding on a few cows, and ride a couple of horses, and have a little cookout and whatnot, and then I'll be headed back to Colorado after the weekend. So, and first off, I do just want to say, since it is Memorial Day weekend, just to take a moment to kind of honor the weekend, and you know that it's a lot of it. Memorial Day weekend is centered around party and cookouts, but I just want to make sure that I do mention, what the actual weekend is about, and it is about remembering the fallen soldiers and the people that have fought for our freedoms in our country, and I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that. So to all of the families and friends and loved ones who have lost somebody, we're thinking of you, and we thank them for their service, and we do remember all of those fallen soldiers. So anyways, let's just get right into it. So we'll just kind of start off. I think I've mentioned, before on another episode, kind of my journey into the health world. It really kind of started after my mom passed away from cancer, and that's when I really got into holistic health side of things and learning more about our food system and our healthcare, and it really put me on a path to try to figure out for myself and for my loved ones, you know, what is kind of wrong with our healthcare system. So it just really opened up a whole new world to me, and then I started really learning about the food system and things like that. But I decided to do a holistic health coaching certification a few years back. And that's when I started really learning a ton about a lot of different ways of eating. The school was very good in the sense that they did teach us a lot of different ways of eating, different perspectives, different ways of thinking, and things like that. But during the time that I was going to school, there was a really big push in the media for veganism. There was a lot of stuff starting to come out about how, you know, meat is bad for you and we shouldn't be eating animal proteins. And as somebody who is an animal lover, I really kind of got caught up in it for a little bit, in terms of, you know, like the humane side of things. And I'm even hesitant to talk about this right now because I kind of cringe when I look back on it, thinking that, oh man, I really believed all that stuff for a little while, and I tried it, and yeah. So anyway, yes, now that I'm, you know, absolutely love what I'm doing in the ranching world, and I hope to really grow, you know, a direct-to-consumer beef business and things like that, which I've already kind of talked about in previous episodes. But anyway, so during that time when I was really learning a lot about health, and this was, you know, a few years after my mom had passed away, so I was really, really focused on how I can almost like to the point where I thought if I could learn as much about health and how to be healthy as possible, maybe I can prevent this from happening to me or to somebody else that I love. And I will admit, there was a point where I did go a little bit overboard with my health. I was very, very strict with what I ate. I was, you know, counting calories. I was a very, very strict eater for a while, and I do think that definitely started not only some like physical health issues, but some emotional eating things as well. And since I've kind of reflected back on that over the last several years, I realized that I was really, really in it for a while. And I think too, for anybody that has been on a similar path, and we can follow a lot of these health accounts and all of these experts in the fields and things like that, you definitely can get really into it to the sense where it almost like controls your day-to-day. And I felt like that was it for me. And I wouldn't, touch anything that had a preservative or anything that had any sort of synthetic chemicals and things like that. And I'm still very much that way. I'm not saying that I'm not, or that I don't have, junk food at certain times and things like that. And, the occasional fast food, even though I try to stay away from it as much as possible. But I was to a point where it was controlling me, and it was controlling my day-to-day, and I was so strict where it started taking the fun out of food, and especially when I started to go on the journey of being vegan. I was a pretty healthy vegan, but I, didn't eat obviously any animal protein. I really ate just a lot of vegetables. I would eat a lot of like the coconut flours and the almond flours and bake a lot. But it definitely took a lot of time to be like a quote unquote healthy vegan, where you're not just eating like Cheetos because, technically they're vegan. Or I don't know about Cheetos, but you guys know what I mean. Something that just doesn't have any animal protein in it can still be very unhealthy. Or just even like the plant-based meats and whatnot, which now I just want to throw up all over the place when I think about it, that I actually tried some of that stuff. Because when you really start to look at the ingredients in those things, it's all processed synthetic chemicals, and nothing about it is natural. So anyway, I really got into it, and it just took a lot of my time. I was in the kitchen for hours and hours and hours, really trying to stick to this. And even when I would go out, and at the time I was actually living in Colorado, not at the ranch that I'm at now. This was years back. When I would go out, I would hardly eat out, and I just had a really, really strict diet, and almost, again, just took the fun. There was no balance for me. It was like either or, and obviously most of the time, there wasn't any like cheat days or anything like that, and we don't have to get into all of the cheat day thinking, because I know that a lot of people have different perspectives and things. And what I've really come down to is you got to do what works for you, and every single person is different. Everyone has different sensitivities. Everybody has to eat for their own body. So that's what I've really come to the conclusion now. But back then, years back, when I was into all of this stuff, it was just being really pushed, not only by the school that I was at, but in the media and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I will admit, as much as I don't want to say, I started reading and researching a lot about it, and I kind of fell into it a little bit. So about 6 months or so into the whole, being pretty strict vegan, I started having a lot of, first, like, digestive issues, and then I started having really painful periods. And I have always had pretty painful periods. Like, I can remember from high school, it kind of started, and then it went away for a while. And, I don't really even remember in college having to deal with it as much. But, this whole area, 6 or 7 months, or six months to a year, actually, when I did try to go the whole vegan route. And also, I just want to mention too that I grew up eating meat. Like, my mom cooked us pretty healthy meals. I mean, we would have like Pop-Tarts and stuff before school, so it wasn't super strict in our house, but for the most part we always had family dinners, and my mom would have a home-cooked meal for us, and meat and vegetables, things like that. So it wasn't that I didn't ever grow up eating meat. It was just during this whole period of my life after losing my mom, and really on this pretty focused and strict health path, is when I really fell into the whole vegan eating for a while. But I started having a lot of like stomach issues. I would just have like these pains in my stomach, and then my cycle, my periods started getting really painful, and I kind of knew that something was off, but then I just chalked it up to, well, I'm doing this for my health, and I've got to stick with this. Maybe it's just my pains coming back from my period. When I used to have it, it's not that bad. It would only last for like a day or two, but they started getting pretty painful for me, on the first and second day. And the health stuff, physically, my stomach issues, and now when I kind of look back on it, I even notice some pictures. When I look at pictures of myself, I look a little, and I don't want to use the word lifeless because that's probably not the right word, but my skin and my eyes just almost looked like just different. There wasn't any like vibrance to it, and kind of take that with a grain of salt, because I know that sometimes we can look back on stuff and try to, not make up a story, but we can look back on things and be like, oh, well, that was the reason why. So, but it is definitely something that I noticed when I look back at myself in pictures during that time. And, obviously there was some stressors too during my life at that point, so that could have been it as well. But anyway, it's just something that I noticed. And so I stuck with it for a little bit longer. During this whole period, though, I always felt myself, like, craving meat for a while. Like, I would see somebody eating a hamburger or, something, and I'd be like, oh, or a steak or whatever, and I'd be like, oh, that looks good, but no, I can't have it. So it was, again, very strict. But I stuck with it for a little bit longer. I was really, into yoga that time, so that whole world, from my experience, has really promoted, and the people that I was kind of following and learning from at that time really promoted, a plant-based diet, things like that. So there was a time when I thought that I could have potentially had endometriosis, and I had a doctor tell me to switch to a plant-based diet. So that was also another reason. And again, I did it and I tried it. And I do remember feeling like the first few months that I did have this strict plant-based, vegan diet was, I felt pretty good. I do remember feeling pretty good for the first few months. And there were a couple of times when I did eat some eggs, and like sometimes I would allow myself to have fish, but there was definitely several months when I was just completely 100% vegan. But yeah, and then about 6 months in is when I started to feel like something was really off, but because I had committed to this way of eating, and because all of this stuff that was going on around me, the way that I was living my life and the people that I was learning from, and I'm very much like a researcher. I love to research and read and learn as much as I can about something. So at that time, I was just seeking out all of the things to, say, okay, well, yeah, going vegan is the best way to go. But then it wasn't until I'd say around like the 8th month mark or something that I really was like, okay, like my stomach's really starting to hurt after I eat. It's not pleasant anymore. I'm kind of like draining the joy out of cooking, and I love to cook, but I was almost like, it was just like a forced thing. And again, it really took some time for me to cook a lot of my meals, just because to have a pretty healthy vegan diet, it does require a lot of time. So I was eating a lot of, like nut-based things. Like I said, the coconut flours and the almond flours. I was baking quite a bit. And I was trying to make, like cashew cheeses and things like that. So, yeah. And then, like I said, when I started not being able to handle the physical symptoms and not being able to brush them off, that's when I started to realize, like, okay, something's off. So one thing I do have to say, like, about myself is that I'm always willing to try something new and see if it works, if it sounds like within reason. But I'm also willing to say, okay, if something's not working or something starting to change or doesn't sound right, maybe I need to go and learn a little bit more about the other side of things. I always like to look at both sides of the coin on whatever topic it is. So I started really being like, okay, something's off. Maybe I need to look into this a little bit more. So I think I started with, health issues developing from vegan, or removing animal proteins from your diet, and consequences of that, or something along those lines. And I started finding a lot of similar stories to myself. So I kind of just, okay, whatever, learned a little bit about it, would read stuff here and there, but was still sticking to the vegan stuff. And then I remember one day we were out with a few friends, or I was out with a few friends at a brewery somewhere around Denver, I think. And they had a food truck there, and they had tacos. And I remember I was like, okay, at that point I was like, maybe I should try to introduce some sort of animal protein back into my diet and see if I start feeling better. And I remember it that day, and I remember sitting down at the picnic table. I remember the picnic table was red. This is how funny sometimes we can remember like such specific things. And looking down at the tacos, it had cabbage on it, and I ordered beef tacos, and it was like all shredded. It was really looked delicious, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna try this. So I ordered them, and I tried it, and I remember biting into it and eating it, and it was like heaven. And I instantly thought, oh my gosh, like, not only obviously are the tacos really good, but eating the meat, like, it felt like my body was like longing for it. Like it was like everything about it felt like it didn't hurt my stomach at all. It, and I have heard of people tell me before that when they stop eating meat and then they do reintroduce meat again, that sometimes you can have like some stomach issues from it because, and don't quote me on this, but that your body kind of stops producing some of like the enzymes that help digest it when you completely take it away. And so I've heard, but that wasn't my experience at all. It was almost like, oh my gosh, my body's been like craving nutrients. So right after that, I was like, okay, well, it could have just been like a really good taco. But then I went to the store a couple days later and I bought some bison meat and I cooked hamburgers. And at that point, when I made hamburgers that night, that was when I never turned back from not eating meat again, because I then started realizing over several weeks, when I started introducing more animal protein back into my diet, I actually started feeling better. And I realized, okay, this is what I'm doing is not working for me, and I feel better when I start eating animal protein into my diet. And again, talk about the pictures, I actually really do remember like looking at my face in the mirror and starting to see some like vibrancy come back into my life. And I have seen pictures of people too at times where they've gone completely vegan. And this isn't to, I just want to make a side note, this isn't to knock anybody from who is vegan and who prefers that lifestyle. Again, if it works for you and if you feel good doing it, amazing. Keep with it. If that's how you are living your life, then great. I don't want to, knock anybody from that. This is just my experience. But I do remember seeing some pictures and comparing myself, and my skin just looks so different. And it, again, when I started eating the meat again, I started noticing just like the vibrancy come back, and the whites around my eyes just felt a little bit brighter, seemed a little bit brighter, things like that. So, anyway, yeah, so that's kind of been my journey. And obviously now, fast forward to me being exposed to, a lot of the ranching side of things. the processing, and just even learning more and more about how meat is a superfood, and honestly about how the media can really hijack some stuff. And if you guys are, you kind of know me a little bit by now, but I do not trust the media whatsoever. And I feel like anytime they say something, we should believe the complete opposite. But yeah, no. But anyway, yeah, I do really feel like a lot of the health industry and the food system, unfortunately, when it's coming from, some mainstream media outlets, it definitely can be pushed with an agenda behind it. And I definitely fell into that for a little bit, but I'm very glad that I was open enough to stop and do my own research and not just kind of take what someone or some article had said and believe it to be truth like I had before. So so that was a little bit of my journey now into where I'm at today. And I'm sharing all of this because I have met a lot of people, and like I had mentioned in the beginning, specifically women who have had a lot of similar experiences. I even, at the farmer's market, specifically when we were selling our beef at the farmer's market in Montana, I would, have people come up to the table and just tell them about what we're doing and a lot of the benefits of how nutrient-dense meat, when raised right, can be extremely good for you. And I met so many women who said to me, oh my goodness, I removed meat from my diet and I either had some health problems or I just didn't feel good, and I noticed when I reintroduced meat again into my diet how much better I actually felt. And I definitely met women who have told me that their hormones got all out of whack, and that's absolutely what happened to me. And years later, I truly believe that I am still dealing with some hormonal issues that developed during that time when I had removed all of the animal protein from my diet. And I won't go into a lot of the facts about, how good meat and eggs are for you. You guys can look that up, in dairy too. But coming from the right sources is one of the things that I do want to mention, and I've talked about that before on here. But making sure that you're hopefully buying, number one, if you can, from a local farmer or rancher. And if not, just trying to support a local farm and ranch if you can. And then, and even if you can't, anytime you buy meat or eggs or dairy, you are voting with your dollars, I guess. So that was kind of my health journey there. And then that's when I really started to really get on the trajectory of learning about where our food comes from. And you guys know that I'm very, very passionate about bringing awareness to people about being more concerned about where your food comes from. Again, supporting local and trying as hard as you can and as much as you can to buy direct from a local farm or ranch, because there are so many different things right now that are going on that are, hurting our farms and ranches, and we as consumers really need to support them. And the most helpful thing is buying direct from them if you can. So I understand that that's not an option for everybody, and that's okay. But if you can, really make an impact, especially make an impact on that farm and ranch that you buy from. And I really do think that when we do buy from a local farm and ranch, we're supporting our community. And I do understand that a lot of America feeds the world, as other countries do. We import foods and whatnot, but to me, it is really important to start with your community first. And the whole idea behind, we have to feed the world, yeah, I believe that that's true to a certain extent, but why not support our local community first and then expand from there? And imagine if every local community could support themselves with food. And again, I understand that that is not 100% feasible all of the time. And I don't think that because we are living in a society where we can go to the grocery store and get an avocado from Mexico and different foods that are imported and flown over here, like dragon fruit and pineapples and all of these kind of more exotic things that you can't grow in certain states or in our country. I think it's not 100% feasible, but if we can all start to support our community start with a couple of things, again, I know I don't want to keep harping on this, but I will. Supporting, buying your meat from a local rancher, or buying your milk from a dairy farmer, or buying your eggs at the farmer's market. Certain things like that, and then we can start to put more dollars back into our own communities. And I really do believe that that's where we can really make such an impact, and things like that. And then knowing your farmer and rancher, asking them, how do you treat your cows, or how do you feed your cows, or what kind of chemicals or fertilizers do you use on your land? And hopefully, you can find one that doesn't really use a lot of chemicals and fertilizers. And that can be a whole other topic for another time, because I do think that there are some times when, farms and ranches, you might have to treat the land with some fertilizer at a certain time to get it to a point where you can then move forward without it. So I do believe that there's a balance there. But if you can really find a farm that does not use, fertilizers and chemicals, I think that that could be the way of the future. And again, it's not always going to be the case, because, going down this side note a little bit, I was listening to a podcast not too long ago about how there was a farmer that took over a piece of land that had been treated with chemicals for 20, 25, 30 years. Every season it was fertilizer. And what starts happening to that land and those plants is they almost develop like what they called like a sugar addiction, to kind of make an analogy. So if we're being fed high amounts of sugar every single day for years, and then one day, or there's a span of a couple of days that you completely stop eating sugar, your body's going to start going through a detox. And that's sometimes what happens to the plants, is that they're being fed this constant, steady, heavy diet of fertilizer, and it's like sugar. And I think they use an analogy like it's almost like a cocaine or something for the plants. And then you completely cut it out, that plant is going to go through a major detox. It can actually end up hurting the plant even more, and it might take even longer to rejuvenate that plant. So what this farmer did was he took fertilizer and he started applying it in smaller amounts over a year, and then started slowly weeding out the fertilizer to now where he hasn't really had to use any of it anymore. But he had to be very careful with those plants, because had he removed it completely 100% cold turkey, it would have actually been worse for the land. So just kind of something else to think about too. And I also do really believe too that it all starts with our soil, right? We have been, in America, traditionally treating our soil with a lot of overused chemicals and fertilizers, and our soil is depleted for sure. There aren't as many nutrients in the soil as there were even 100 years ago. So I really, really do believe that it starts with our soil, the health of our planet and animals and everybody that's living on it, all living things. It does start with our soil. And, you know, kind of going back to a little bit too with the health stuff, you know, things like cancer and chronic illness that are so prevalent in our society right now are just really accepted as normal. And it's not normal. You know, it's not normal for so many people to develop cancer. And children, you know, too, like childhood cancer has skyrocketed in the last, I don't know the statistics, but, you know, 50, 60 years or so. That's not normal for a child to have cancer. And even just the chronic illnesses that people can have that just seem so prevalent in our society today that we just kind of accept as, oh, well, if it's going to happen at some point maybe, or, you know, I'm sure that every person that might be listening to you either knows somebody that has cancer that's close to them, or knows, you know, a friend of a friend type deal that has had cancer. I don't think that that's normal. And there's a lot of reasons why, you know, there are just so many environmental toxins in our culture and our society right now. And we're just seeing the effects of it because of how we've been treating our land and our environment for years and years and years and years. And I think that we're all coming to a point where more people are starting to be concerned about it again, because this stuff isn't normal, and we are just overloaded with toxins in the air, in our water, in our products that we use, in our food. You know, they're everywhere. And this is where I kind of come back to where I was so crazy for a while, like just so strict with anything that I was putting on my body, anything that I was eating. I was going to great lengths to make sure that no toxin or chemical could touch me. But right now in our society, that's kind of literally impossible. And for you and for anybody to not go to some extreme where I think I was kind of towing the line on a little bit, to the point where, again, it was affecting my day-to-day, you know, there's going to be, we've got to accept what is, but we've also got to still live our lives too and enjoy our lives. And there's only so much that you can do. So whatever you can do, whatever that looks like for you, yes, buying all natural products, you know, your lotions, your hair products. I have to admit, I do not use all natural hair products. And if anybody wants to write into me to tell me if they found an all natural hair product that actually works, I have used a bunch of them, and they make my hair feel terrible. So I have not found one that actually works. So that is one area that I still use, you know, some professional products that have the chemicals in it. But for the most part, I really try to not use, you know, a lot of my body lotions, and now I've been using beef tallow a lot as moisturizer. A lot of my beauty and health products, I really, really try to not use a lot of chemical products. And reading labels and things like that, you can really start learning about what's actually in the products. You know, in terms of fragrance, like I think fragrance is a label they can put on there, but it can host something like 20 or 30 different kinds of chemicals that can just be under that one name fragrance, because they don't actually have to put in on the label what it actually is. So yeah, just things like that. Learning about labeling a little bit more if you're interested and you're really wanting to just start to remove. But I would just, for anybody that might not be doing this already and wants to start but just feels super overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, do I just have to throw away everything in my house? No, start with 1 or 2 beauty products. Start with 1 or 2 household products. Do a detergent and a cleaner. Start there, and then maybe like a foundation or a moisturizer or something like that. Just start small, and then every month or so swap a product for an all-natural one. And that's kind of what I did, that I felt like I wasn't just having to toss everything away all at once. And there was a certain point where I did just kind of remove everything, but I started off a little bit smaller because it really felt overwhelming for me, especially after, at the same time, completely revamping my entire way of eating. So I would start there. But yeah, anyway, there really wasn't a point to this episode. It was just to kind of share a little bit more about my health journey and how I've kind of come here. And just to go back to, the hormonal thing, I've definitely been getting better. Even up until a few months ago, I was definitely still dealing with a lot of hormonal issues. And then, to be honest, there was a certain point even last year for several months where I, was eating a lot of junk food and really wasn't kind of taking care of myself as much as I had in the past. And I was really trying to find that balance, because for me, I can tend to be all or nothing. So I'm either all in, or I'm eating healthy and exercising, or I'm not eating healthy and not exercising at all. So I can tend to be very black and white in that sense. And I'm trying to, get better at finding more of a common ground there. But, so, we all go through ups and downs, and there's certain points, of our journey that are just going to have the ebb and flows and the ups and downs. But, I think that if you've experienced anything similar, or if you are listening to this and you are somebody that's, vegetarian, vegan, completely plant-based, and are maybe starting to see some physical or even emotional, side effects, I would say, just start doing a little bit more research and maybe start doing some more experimenting and see what works for you, and see how you feel if what you're doing right now isn't working for you. And I applaud anybody that wants to, has been doing things one way and is open to seeing things in a different way, and experimenting. And especially when it comes to your health too, at the end of the day, our health is really what matters, because if you don't have your health, what do you have? It affects your everyday. It affects what you can do. It affects your energy levels. So to me, my focus has really been on finding that balance of not being so strict where it was like taking away the joy in my life, to still eating healthy, still taking care of my body, still making sure that I'm on an exercise routine. And I know I had touched on this a little bit too, but I had developed some emotional eating issues for sure. It started a little bit after my mom passed away, and again, I think a lot of it contributed to just some what's the right word, like dysfunction, or I wouldn't go as far to say it was like an extreme disorder, but I had, again, it was either all or nothing. So I was all in with eating super, super strict and healthy, wouldn't touch even a piece of chocolate, to going off the deep end and just like throwing it all in and eating whatever junk food and pizza and candy that I could find. So over the last several years, I've really been able to find a good common ground. And one thing that I do want to mention, and this is not medical advice, this is just my experience, and for anybody that wants to try this, I would definitely say especially work with your doctor, or find somebody that you can trust that has experience with this. But I started learning more about fasting, and Dr. Mindy Peltz is somebody that I had followed for a few months, and a friend had introduced me to her, and just, online, not actually meeting her. But I started learning more about fasting, and she talks a lot about women's hormones and a lot of the issues that I had been dealing with, and still a little bit today, but they've gotten a heck of a lot better. But I really started following what she was talking about, and I have really adopted a 16/8 fasting kind of lifestyle. So I have a period where, for the most part, and again, I'm not always the best at it, like just even on this road trip, I haven't been sticking to the healthy eating as much as I could be, but I've been fasting for 16 hours and then having an 8-hour eating window. So I usually stop eating around like 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night is when I have my last meal, and then I don't really eat until 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon the next day. And I can tell you that my energy levels have been incredible. Such a difference from when I was eating differently, and even when I was eating really healthy, I really feel like intermittent fasting is something that really works for me and my body. I feel like I have more energy throughout the day. I don't have any of those 3 p.m. crashes that I used to feel, or 2 p.m. crashes, and a lot of the times I was feeling really tired after I ate, and I have kind of moved to not eating as many like breads and heavy carbohydrates, and that's really been working for me. More of a quote-unquote carnivore diet. I am definitely not 100% doing the carnivore diet, but for the most part, I've really been eating meat and eggs and some vegetables here and there. And I did the GAPS diet for a little while, which really helped kind of get my digestive system back on track and my energy levels back on track. So that really helped me. So I've definitely done quite a bit, but I do have to say that there was a few days over the winter time. So that's when I started learning more about Dr. Mindy and reading a lot of her information and a lot of the research that she's done, and I decided to do a 3-day water fast. And again, this is not medical advice, so definitely do your own research. It might not work for everybody, but I did the 3-day water fast, and I had said to myself when I first started, because she had opened up a Facebook group, which I was a part of while I was doing this 3-day water fast, and I got a glucose monitor and I was testing my blood sugar, and she gives you certain parameters. If you drop below a certain number on your blood sugar, then you stop fasting, because it can be hurtful and harmful to your health. So I got the glucose monitor and I started the water fast, I think on like a Thursday. And I did the 72 hour, and then I actually made it to about 81 hours, because my 72 hours were up at like 8 o'clock at night, and I ended up just going to bed, so I fasted for a little bit longer. But there are a ton of health benefits to fasting on a cellular level. And if you're interested, you can look up some of her stuff. It's really, really interesting. And there's a reason why fasting, has a lot of civilizations in history have used fasting as a way to health. So it's in the Bible, things like that. So there really is some extremely positive things that can come out of it. But I did the 3-day water fast, and I actually felt really good. I have never done something that extreme before. I didn't really think I could do it. But when I decided that I was going to do it, I made a commitment to myself, and I said, I am going to try this. If I can stick with it and I don't go below that certain number, I think it was like, if you go below like 50 on your blood glucose, then you should stop fasting, because you can start, it would be bad. But I never got below, and there were definitely certain points, like I think at hour 32 and then hour 48, you can, your body's like really starting to detox, so you can really start to feel not great. So I definitely had my moments, but I stuck with it, and ever since then, I feel like my health has been on track. I mean, again, I have not been perfect. I've eaten some junk food since then, and I did the water fast, so that's about like 5 months ago now. But I really do believe that it almost cured like my emotional eating issues. Ever since then, I just haven't had a issue with it as much as I used to, and I used that water fast as a time of prayer too. So I was really praying a lot. I decided that I was doing this for my health, and that it was going to be a time where I, just got closer to God, and asked Him to kind of help me break this unhealthy habit of mine. And I really think that was a total game changer for me. So again, not medical advice. Do your own research. Just because it worked for me doesn't mean that it would for you. But I definitely really like a lot of the information that Dr. Mindy Peltz, I think is her name on Instagram, and she's put out some really good stuff, especially if you're struggling with some hormonal issues, where it just seems that a lot of women today are, and it really sucks. So, and again, I don't think that that's normal, and it's not normal for women to have really, really painful periods and painful cycles. And I mean, there were years and years and years that I would get my period and I would throw up. I would be bedridden for a day at least, if I didn't take any Tylenol or Advil, and I try not to take a lot of that unless I absolutely have to. So there were, I struggled with that a lot. And again, I don't think it all came from the way that I was eating during that time, but I do think that it definitely contributed, because it was after that my cycle started getting a lot worse. And then when I started introducing meat again, it started getting better. But I think that I saw some long-term effects from eating that way. So anyway, and I worked with a naturopath as well. I worked with a functional medicine doctor to really help me kind of figure out some of these hormonal issues. So I would definitely recommend, if you're wanting to try to figure it out and wanting to go down, the more natural path, because for me, I had went to my doctor with all of the hormonal and the painful periods, and she wanted to put me on birth control just as the solution. And I was at that point where I was like, I don't want a Band-Aid anymore. Like, there's something wrong. I've tried that. It didn't work. And she wanted to put me on a different one. And then if that doesn't work, we'll put you on another brand. And, a lot of our healthcare system, I think, likes to Band-Aid things. And we don't like to get to the root cause of it, with a lot of these, like, chronic health issues and things like that. So that's when I started to seek out other alternative doctors. And they've definitely helped me. So, So I think that's about it. I hope this was informative in some way. Again, if you have had a similar experience with anything that I'm talking about, let me know. I love to hear from you guys. And if there's anything that I can help with, please let me know. or if you have any questions too, or even any criticisms. Like I want to hear from you guys too. If you're like, I've had a completely opposite experience, and I think it's good to kind of talk about everything. So, or both sides of it, I guess. So, and I just love to hear from you guys and your different experiences too. So anyway, I hope everybody has a great Memorial Day weekend, and if you're listening to this after the fact, I hope you had a great Memorial Day weekend, and again, remembering our fallen soldiers, and the people that have fought for our freedoms in this country. So, and all of the active service members as well. So, and past service members. So anyway, okay, I will wrap this up. I will stop rambling. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Again, if there's, I always love to hear from you guys, so just reach out to me on Instagram, send me a message. I love to hear from you. So anyway, have a great rest of the week, and we'll talk soon.